to studio. Can I do that? Can I do that on the fly? Oh my gosh, I just did. Apparently you can change the vocal codec on the fly. I don't know if it took effect, but I did.
You sound very different.
Do I?
Yeah.
Do you say that to all the podcasters?
I only podcast with you, Tom.
That's not true. All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
Daily Tech News Show with Tom Merritt is brought to you by loyal patrons like you. If that's not you, head on over to bit.ly/helpdtns because giving a little always helps a lot. That's bit.ly/helpdtns.
This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, March 25th, 2015. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today from Australia, Mr. Peter Wells, back on the show. Good to have you back, man.
Good morning, Tom. How are you, sir?
It's afternoon where I am, and I, as always, am extremely grateful that you are willing to get up much earlier than I would ever like to get up to do this show. So thank you.
No worries at all. Yeah, just bear that in mind when I'm reading out some of the headlines that I might not have read them before.
All right, will do. And we're going to talk a little bit after the headlines about the metadata collection bill that's working its way through the Parliament in Australia. But let's start off with those headlines. Lots of announcement from Facebook's F8 developer keynote this morning. Let's run through them. The big one, Messenger platform. This allows developers to integrate Messenger into their apps. So they still make a separate app, but it can integrate with Messenger. For example, you could go as a user from Messenger to the Giphy app to find that perfect animated GIF and then go back to Messenger to send it to a friend. Or maybe jump to the ESPN app, grab a story on sports, send the link to a friend through Messenger. Facebook's also trying out business communication over Messenger with Everlane and Zulily. Customers of those retail outlets can talk to customer support and get order updates through Messenger. I kind of like the idea of getting my shipping updates through Messenger. That's not bad.
Yeah, I was thinking before you started reading out that story that Facebook is one of those things that I'm not really... I always feel like an old man when a Facebook story comes up because I don't use it all that often. But Messenger is actually the one part of their empire that I've now reluctantly used because I work with a lot of 20-year-olds and the main way they talk to me is through Facebook Messenger. So it's kind of become I'm kind of glad they broke it out of their main app because, yeah, I use it all the time now. But I never actually launched the main app.
It's the same with me. I use Messenger a whole lot more than I use Facebook because people message me through it. And it's interesting. The spin on this has been that Facebook-owned WhatsApp is actually going to stay just a pure messaging app, whereas Messenger is becoming the platform because it can afford to do that. It's going to be more like Line and WeChat, where it tries to add new things to that. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, I know that WhatsApp has a huge number of users. I think it's 700 million users. But all the people I communicate with through Messenger, and I wonder if that's going to annoy them if there's all this other stuff or not. Maybe it won't. It doesn't seem to annoy the Line people that they have stickers. People seem to love it.
Yeah, WhatsApp seems to, relish the fact that it is so simple. I mean, you still can't run it on more than one device, and that seems to be built into its DNA that this is just a very, very simple platform that, and I think there's, benefits in that. Again, talking to the young people at work, they don't like the idea that some of their personal chat might be syncing to their work computer. So that's one of the reasons why they use WhatsApp.
More from F8. Facebook will now support 360-degree spherical videos in news feeds, which will also be supported in the Facebook-owned Oculus Rift. Makes sense. You can also now embed Facebook videos on other sites. This is a direct challenge to YouTube. Suddenly, Facebook video becomes useful if I can go and put it on other sites, or if I'm a website operator, I can now present videos that I find on Facebook to my audience. YouTube kind of the default option for that right now. I'm curious because of, yeah, sure, you can do this with Dailymotion. You can do this with a lot of other video providers as well. But Facebook has such a huge user base. This could actually threaten YouTube, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, yeah, Dailymotion, sure, it can do the same thing, but Dailymotion does not have the brand that YouTube or Facebook has.
Yeah. Facebook also updated the comment system so that comments on a story on Facebook will sync with Facebook embedded comments on a story's web page and vice versa. If you didn't know this, a lot of websites will use Facebook comments as their commenting system. But what would happen is you'd make a comment over there using your Facebook account, but it wouldn't show up in your newsfeed, and you might have to make that same comment if you really wanted to make sure somebody saw it, if you're replying to somebody. Now, those things will sync across, so you only have to make it in one place. Although, it does mean when you're replying to somebody in your Facebook feed, it may show up on a website somewhere if you're not thinking about it.
Yeah, just Facebook getting further and further across our internets.
And Facebook's platform as a service product, Parse, announced Parse for Internet of Things. So now they're getting into our doorknobs. Enhanced sessions to improve app security, support for React, and a new debugging tool. Of course, the big one is that Parse for Internet of Things. The first step for that is an SDK for Arduino, and they say they have other SDKs on the way as well. They're certainly not the first to do this. Kind of expected when Facebook bought Parse that this was going to come eventually.
So what does this mean exactly for my Internet of Things devices? I mean, what would I be able to use this for?
This is you know what? I don't want to go too far in trying to explain this because I don't 100% understand it. I've never used it. But Parse is a mobile backend management, so you can operate, manage more than one device at a time. So this gives a company the ability to manage more than one Internet of Things device at a time, not just a phone. So if I have a bunch of Arduino devices, I could use Parse to manage them all.
As your backend. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Engadget reports Sony announced the Yukimura update will come to the PlayStation 4 tomorrow, bringing the long-promised suspend and resume function that lets you go into sleep mode during a paused game. You also get the ability to back up and restore to an external USB drive, the ability to share to good old Dailymotion, as we mentioned earlier, and to search your Facebook contacts to find anyone who is in the PlayStation network and is a member. Finally, verified accounts arrive to identify developers, producers, designers, and community managers.
That play pause is the headline here, though, for sure. Everybody's been waiting for that since they announced it at E3, so it better work as advertised, because people have been waiting a long time for that.
I absolutely have, yes. I'm looking forward to that.
The Daily Dot has sources that say YouTube is planning to relaunch its live streaming platform with a renewed focus on live gaming and esports. YouTube has apparently recruited a team of about 50 engineers with expertise in the streaming industry. The company will likely make an official announcement on its revamped streaming service sometime around E3 in June. Makes sense with an esports focus. I'm hoping when they do this, they don't, degrade the ability of people like me right now to stream on YouTube with non-gaming content, or just kind of rule out that side of things. I mean, that's one of the advantages YouTube has over Twitch. I get the attraction though, because Twitch is making a whole lot more money and is essentially the only one in the esports business right now.
Yeah, I think this will be a good move anyway for people who use Hangouts and things like that for their shows. I can only think that the more very smart engineers working on live streaming will help YouTube's platform overall. I'd actually be fascinated to see whether the brand Hangouts kind of goes somewhere, or I don't know, evaporates as Google brands sometimes do, because we're seeing so much movement there on Google Plus. It seems to be Hangouts is like the last thing that Plus is holding on to.
Yeah, I think Hangouts and Google Plus are just going to slowly fade into other projects. And I think this is obviously the direction Hangouts goes, which is the new built-in encoder for YouTube Live, which that would be fine to me. I don't care which page I have to go. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. Engadget reports Elite Motion announced it's building an optional faceplate to add to the motion sensing to the Razer's open-source virtual reality headset. The faceplate will be an option for the OSVR dev kit, expected to be available for pre-order in May, with units shipping in June at the earliest. Leap hopes to embed the motion sensors in more VR headsets.
Yeah, this looked pretty cool, although it's obviously a very produced video. But the demonstration video that they have of it, it's just a faceplate with a few LEDs on it. Otherwise, you wouldn't know anything else is in there. But it still works exactly like a Leap. So it can recognize where your hands are. If you don't understand what Leap Motion does, it's motion sensing to the point where it's like, oh, your hands are there? Okay, well, we can do gesture support. We can let you reach out and grab things. I have one sitting over there that I use. I used to use
Of
to
course
try
you
to.
do.
Yeah, well, I ordered it when it first came out, and I tried to use it to operate, my computer. It's not good for that, but it is good for games and things like that.
Yeah, look, to be honest, I have one too. But yeah, when it first came out, it was one of those things that why do I need to hover slightly above my laptop? It's very, very cool technology, but the
Yeah.
use case they were presenting at the time didn't make sense.
Gizmodo reports Ford has introduced technology that limits a car's top speed based on reading speed limit signs. This is in the UK. The intelligent speed limiter will be available on the Ford S-Max. I guess you can call it SMAX, Ford SMAX, and uses a dashboard camera to keep an eye on road signs, adjusting the speed of the vehicle accordingly. Speed limit data can also be pulled from GPS systems if installed, in case you don't see a sign. If the vehicle exceeds the set speed limit, an audible warning alarm is triggered, and the vehicle's engine stops getting fuel until it slows down enough. So it doesn't slam on the brakes either if you're going downhill. It just sort of tries to adjust.
See, I would use this definitely in Australia. We have very, very strict speeding laws here. There is no way I would use it in America. Having driven around Texas especially, I just could not believe. I had my TomTom set to yell at me when I was speeding, and we turned it off after about the second day because everyone speeds in your country.
Yeah. No, the speed limit is the minimum speed in the United States, essentially. You get honked at for going the speed limit. So, yeah, I'm not sure how you implement this in large portions. Although there are areas of the United States that even obey their speed limits. It's really weird. It's a weird thing.
I haven't been to those areas.
No, probably not.
TechCrunch reports that Apple have acquired FoundationDB, a company specializing in NoSQL databases. FoundationDB was well known for its ability to handle ACID-compliant transactions quickly and strong scalability of its database technology. TechCrunch notes the acquisition could bolster Apple's server-side infrastructure for the App Store, iTunes, cloud services, or the rumored TV service. A notice on the FoundationDB website notes that the downloads of its database software are no longer available.
Yep, that's what Apple does, right? They just buy a company and they eat it. And whether this is a sign of a television service or not kind of doesn't matter. Apple needs help in serving up data. Even if you think they're doing a great job, they're just going to keep serving up more and more data. So it makes perfect sense for them to buy a company like this.
Absolutely.
The Verge reports a free-to-play game called Halo Online will launch in closed beta this spring in Russia. The game was developed by 343 Industries along with Saber Interactive and Innova Systems. It'll be a multiplayer-only version of Halo 3 designed to run on low-end PCs. Activision recently partnered with Tencent to do a similar thing, bringing Call of Duty Online to PCs in China. So it's kind of an interesting trend of game developers taking their big franchises and coming up with online-only low-end versions to expand the base and introduce people to those IPs.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's the same kind of idea, I guess, as when we see older versions of games appearing on mobile platforms as they first go on a mobile platform as they then start to develop. So, we saw with Grand Theft Auto, for instance, it went all the way back to Grand Theft Auto 3 on iOS and Android and then slowly started to move forward.
Now that you mention it, it is in fact the same idea behind what Nintendo's doing with DNA, where they're saying they're not going to port old games, but they're saying we want to introduce mobile people to our characters, to Mario and Zelda and the rest, and hopefully bring them over to the Nintendo hardware that way. It's exactly what these guys are doing with Halo Online.
Absolutely.
Free to play, and there will be in-game purchases, but we don't know any details about that. So go get them, Russians. You're the only ones that get it, at least in the closed beta. Time for some news from you. These come from our subreddit, dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. What are you waiting for? If you haven't checked it out, you got to check it out. It's a great news source all on its own. I subscribe to the Twitter just to see things as they are submitted. Go to dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Do some voting. Help us out. djsekani submitted the Verge article that Radio Shack put its database of 13 million customer emails and 65 million physical addresses up for auction as part of its bankruptcy proceedings. Dominant shareholder Standard General won the bid, but the court still has to approve, and there's some objections. Attorneys general from Texas and Tennessee have challenged the purchase on the basis that Radio Shack's privacy policy says it will not sell customer information. AT&T claims it actually is the rightful owner of some of the data because it involved selling AT&T contracts in Radio Shack stores. The United States Federal Trade Commission has previously allowed data like this to be sold in bankruptcy cases only as long as the privacy policy is maintained by the new buyer and that buyer is in the same general line of business.
So is this Radio Shack just felt that there was too much goodwill out there for their company falling apart, and they just needed to, get one final story in?
I guess. I don't know, man. I mean, I think this is Radio Shack going, you want to pay us for it? We'll sell it. We'll let the courts decide if we should or not. We need the money.
Yeah, this is a car that's just been stripped down to its engine at this point.
Yeah. I should point out that Rich from lovely Cleveland emailed us to let us know that the docket and some of the pleadings in the bankruptcy case are available via the recap project on archive.org. If you want to peruse, you can do it for free. Otherwise, you'd have to pay something like Pacer 10 cents a page. He says a Chapter 11 case is a morass of legalese and somewhat arcane procedures, but it may be of some interest, if for nothing else than getting a glimpse at the inner workings and relationship of a large corporation. And he's got a readable version at cases.primeclerk.com as well. We'll put that link in the show notes. But thank you, Rich. If you want to find out if Radio Shack has just given up on its reputation, you can go page through those policy pages.
Habichuelacondulce sent us the Verge story about Amazon's testifying before a Senate subcommittee that the drones approved by the FAA are already obsolete. The FAA took a year and a half to process Amazon's application to fly one specific model of drone. Amazon's VP of Global Policy, Paul Meisner, claims the European Aviation Safety Agency, which treats drones as a new category of aircraft, has dramatically shorter approval time. Amazon also argued that for automated flight to be allowed, and not just line of sight. Meisner warned that drone innovation would suffer, and development could move overseas to take advantage of less restrictive legislation.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know how much you're up on the drone scene over there, but I think everywhere in the world has less restrictive legislation than the United States. Do you know of a big drone experimental scene in Australia?
Not really. No. I mean, I've got a friend who does some drone photography and has made quite a bit of money out of that, the lucky guy. But yeah, no, in terms of legislation, I'm not too sure. I mean, generally speaking, the drone stories I see in Australia are more kind of those headline-grabbing PR moves of, say, eBay are going to deliver drones to your house and that kind of stuff, or deliver package via drone, which, it's always one of those stories that just grabs a headline and doesn't actually ever happen. So
yeah, totally. Although I do like the idea of eBay delivering a drone I bought to my house via drone.
Yeah. Well, we don't have Amazon still, so eBay has kind of become the default Amazon in this country, which is
interesting.
Kind of an odd situation.
Yeah. Hobbit from PA saw the Recode article that says Recode saw a document outlining a new Google service called Pony Express that will let you receive and pay bills from within Gmail. Gmail users have to verify their identity with a third party, then provide the account numbers of the bills they want to receive and pay. Once that's done, bills show up in a special folder, and users can choose to pay them from within Gmail using a linked credit card or debit card. The service is scheduled to launch in the fourth quarter, according to the documents Recode saw. It's a lot of linking, and it's a lot of information that you got to give to Google, who already have a lot of information about you, but it is really tempting, isn't it?
It kind of is. Like when I first read this, I thought, well, I don't want another one payment click service. But then I thought, well, all the other one payment click services I use aren't for anything important. Maybe I should actually, pay some bills with this convenient service. But instead of buying video games or music or that kind of stuff. So yeah. I don't know.
If you are using Gmail right now to get your bill statements or your bill alerts from either your bill paying service or your credit card, this is going to be very tempting to be like, hey, instead of just putting them in a folder called bills, they'll go into a folder all on their own, and then you just go in there and take care of them, and you're done.
And if they use that smart label, I wonder if one day you could just hit the top of the label and all the bills get paid.
Oh my gosh. That's really a good idea. I mean, it's a horrible idea, but a really good idea all at the same time. And that is a look at the headlines. All right, folks, if you haven't been following this, Australia has a new data retention bill moving through Parliament. It would allow for the retention of call records, billing information, IP addresses, email addresses, and location information based on cell tower use to be retained by telcos for 2 years, starting in the year 2017. One controversial part of this is they don't have to be stored in Australia either. They can be stored offshore. This is warrantless access. Now, part of the debate, as I understand it, is that there is currently already warrantless access of this kind of information. It just isn't mandated to be collected for this long. And there are 80 authorities or organizations that can access it right now. This bill would reduce that to 20. Police would still need to get a warrant to look at a journalist's records, but not for anybody else. And that warrant would go before a public interest advocate who would argue against the police access to identify journalist sources, and the judge would then weigh what the public interest was. Is the public interest in helping law enforcement, or is the public interest in helping the journalist protect the source? Meanwhile, if you're the intelligence agency, do you say it ACO or just ASIO?
ASIO, yeah.
ASIO. You can bypass the judge and just apply to the attorney general for a warrant, who then can listen to the advocate or not. Doesn't really matter. The bill passed the lower house with only 3 members against it. It is now in the Senate, and Peter, it sounds like it might pass even today, right?
Yeah, I would expect it to probably pass by the end of today. There doesn't seem to be a lot of once we have a 2-party preferred system, as you guys do. So once the 2 major parties kind of agreed on their own reasons to pass this, so the Labor Party, who are technically opposition, not seeming like opposition at the moment, when they agreed to the journalist protections, that was their final sticking point, and then they agreed to push this legislation through. So today, the only thing stopping the legislation getting through the Senate today is basically people talking. It'll be once the final arguments have been said by the very few independents and Green senators who are opposed to it. Senator Ludlam, actually, if you want to follow. One of our few senators who seems to understand what the laws are and what kind of impact they might have. He's a fantastic senator, and it's a shame that we don't have more people like him. And I don't mean that just politically. I mean that he really does understand some of the implications of the law, and does seem to understand what, say, metadata is, which, for instance, the Attorney General didn't even seem to understand the concept of the term before he started announcing these laws. So, I mean, I can't help but feel depressed by the whole thing. It does feel like a law that was written with ASIO and the Australian Federal Police in mind, and was brought to Parliament, and the people who then kind of pushed it through Parliament were the people who said, well, I feel like the argument internally was, well, I don't really understand the technology behind it, but it does sound like a vote winner in the sense that it's tough on terrorism, and we can push that angle. We're saving people from terrorists, and that can only be a good thing. So we can probably spin it that way, and it just feels like that was the main impetus of these laws. I mean, although as we said before the show, it's not like our metadata is not being collected anyway.
Yeah, you give up your metadata to people voluntarily a lot, or at least some kinds of metadata, even more than metadata if you're logging into Yahoo or Google for your mail. At the same time, I think what may be lost on some listeners is that this is Australia approving the collection of metadata on its own citizens. The United States very carefully tries to say, we won't collect metadata on our own citizens, or we won't allow that to be used anyway. We can only get it for conversations between our citizens and those overseas. And Australia, as you pointed out to me in an email, is part of the Five Eyes with the United States, where they share intelligence. So essentially what Australia has done is said, well, the United States can look at conversations between its citizens and our citizens, but it can't look at conversations between our own citizens. So let's look at those for us. And then conceivably, it could be shared through the Five Eyes Association as well. I think the most surprising thing about this is that Australians, with only 3 members of the House objecting, are saying, yes, go ahead, collect my metadata, and allow a law enforcement official to look at it for any reason at any time they want, with no oversight.
I mean, it's terrifying. I mean, when you say it clearly like that, it is absolutely terrifying. But I understand why there were only 3 members objecting, and like I said, it was 2 independent members and 1 Greens member in the lower house who objected, and that was because the deals had already been made between the Labor and Liberal government before the motion was even brought to the Parliament. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing if you watch it on YouTube. This whole debate lasts about 6 minutes, where the communications minister brings in the bill, and half the members leave the House, and he just talks to an empty room, and then apart from the 3 objecting members. So the whole thing was kind of predetermined and pushed through. But I think it's interesting actually to go back to that point of the fact that Australians have been living for a while, as the rest of the world has been living, with this understanding that the NSA has been free to go through our metadata, free to go through our Gmail conversations, any kind of major, any kind of digital conversation we are having, and store that information. I feel maybe that's one of the reasons why there has not been so much of a debate here, that it just kind of, like you said, we've already been outsourcing all of this to you anyway. Like we've already been outsourcing our spying conversations to the US. We may as well do it at home as well. And I kind of feel that might be one of the reasons why this just doesn't seem to be able to make the front page. Like I don't feel that there's some kind of some, I don't know, conspiracy theory here that mainstream media are keeping it off the front page. I just don't think it sells papers.
Sounds like police are coming for you right now.
Yeah, indeed. But yeah, it just feels like something that has not been, I don't know, it hasn't made people care.
My guess is when Prime Minister Tony Abbott said, this is like reading the outside of an envelope, suddenly people said, oh yeah, they're not reading my email. They're not reading things or listening to my phone calls. They're just finding out, who I called when. That doesn't sound that bad. I think that sold it. Frankly, and I don't think people understand what can be done with that. And there was a quote in one of these ZDNet articles that you sent me from Edward Snowden saying, metadata is extraordinarily intrusive. As an analyst, I'd prefer to be looking at metadata than looking at content because it's quicker and easier and it doesn't lie. So if somebody really wants to track you, find out where you went, they can look at your metadata and say, oh, you pinged that cell tower then and that cell tower then, and now I have a map of everywhere you went. And yet nobody's really objecting, nobody's thinking of it that way. I also think the other side of it is that you can get around this. If you really want to communicate with someone without setting off this metadata or leaving a metadata trail, you can. You just don't use a cell phone. You use encrypted message apps. I know they mentioned Wicker being used by the Attorney General himself to protect his messages and eliminate traces of metadata. We were talking about WhatsApp and WeChat. Those use different types of messaging systems that don't show up on these old-fashioned systems. And who uses phones anymore, right? So you can protect yourself. In fact, Australians are very good at this. They have all been using VPN to watch Netflix for several years, right? I mean, one would think you guys have got all the best VPNs set up already.
Yeah. This feels like a stimulus package for the VPN networks out there who have just lost a lot of...
Because Netflix just launched. Right, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I will correct you that it wasn't the Attorney General who uses Wicker. It's Malcolm Turnbull, the Communications Minister.
My mistake. Thank you.
Yeah, I doubt the Attorney General could actually operate his phone.
I was giving him too much credit, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's also worth noting. I mean, I don't think people bought that it's the envelope uh, discussion that Abbott brought up. I think that was that was roundly mocked when he mentioned that, and it keeps coming back in the stories about metadata, not because people think it's a good example, but because people think it's kind of an embarrassing example that was brought up because it has been kind of torn apart by most media, but again, people just don't seem to care. I do think it is worthwhile not to go too much into the politics side of it, but Tony Abbott is an incredibly unpopular prime minister at this stage, and I feel that that's one of the other reasons why this has suddenly come up again. This legislation had been kind of kicking around in the back rooms for a couple of months, but again, I feel because this, the one play that Abbott seems to have now is to say that he is tough on crime and he is tough on bad guys and he's tough on terrorists, and I think that's why suddenly this came immediately back into Parliament and pushed through so quickly. So again, that might just be me being a little bit cynical about the whole thing, but it just feels like that was one of the main reasons why this suddenly came up again. But yeah, I would definitely say that I would much rather be looking at metadata if I was trying to work out. I mean, I do this myself at work. The amount of times I'm trying to, just to work out an issue that someone might be having with a service or their computer. It's so much easier to look at the logs than to listen to what the user tells you they're doing, because quite often they might forget that they, spilled a cup of coffee on their laptop. So,
yeah, or just not want to tell you. Yeah,
exactly.
Patients lie, as House says.
Absolutely, yes. I think that's why that show was so popular amongst IT workers.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so it sounds to me like Australians know very well what data is being collected by metadata, and they're just whatever. They feel like this is all out there anyway.
Well, I mean, yeah. I think the one thing that's going to I guess come up as an issue is phones, because of course you can say, well, you can use a VPN or you can use the Onion router or something like that to protect a lot of the communication you have on your own computer, but your phone gives out so much information about you at all times, including, like you said, location data, which can be so telling. And I think that's the one thing that you can't really protect against apart from getting rid of your smartphone. I don't think most people are prepared to do that. So, I think that'll be the interesting thing that will come out of this 18-month trial. As you said, it's going to be a full 18-month trial before this becomes official law, and I'm sure the ISPs and the telcos will have a couple of things to say once they actually see how much data they're having to collect, how much cost that they have to pass on to their customers, and who knows, that it could just take one, say, PlayStation-style hack of this entire bucket of data for people to realize just how much data is going to be sitting on servers somewhere about them. So, if there is some kind of PlayStation-style hack, and sorry, Sony, for using you as the example there, but if there is some kind of massive hack of this metadata collection, of these metadata collection services, I think that will be the thing that finally kills this.
All right, our pick of the day comes from 40 Thieves in chat, Ali Smith, who said on Friday's show last week, the listener's pick was Python the hard way. Got him thinking about a pick he's been meaning to send in for a while, Sublime Text, a plain text editor with loads of useful features. In fact, 40 Thieves says, I've used it for several years as a web developer as my main editor. I even wrote my university dissertation using it. There's also a lot of plugins for it to assist with editing all sorts of languages or just plain text files. Both major versions are free to use with an unlimited trial, which basically means every 15th time or so you press save, you'll have to close a pop-up window, which sounds annoying, but if you're just editing the occasional file, I think it's totally fine. So if you're ever in need of a lightweight, easy-to-use text editor, which is supported on all desktop platforms, Sublime Text is 40 Thieves' go-to recommendation. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Do you have a preferred text editor that you use?
I don't have to do anything kind of, anything technical. So basically I just use Simple Note as my main little notepad between all devices, and I love it.
Yeah, that's what I use as well. And also 40 Thieves wanted to point out that we have Best of Bot is still a thing and archiving the best bits of DTNS. So, keep that in mind if you're watching live. Send your picks to feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com, and you can find my picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. A couple of messages before we're out of here. Jim wrote in and says, it seems lately you or guests have made a mention of DivX when talking about something that has failed. On episode 2453, Justin Robert Young mentioned it after talking about the DRM on LED. This was the last straw. There is no way you could be talking about the DivX codec because it is a codec. It either is used or not, but fail is kind of a strong word for a media wrapper. And then Jim did the research of the tubes in the event there was another meaning, and sure enough, he found the Wikipedia about DivX, the Circuit City video rental service. Jim said, I had no knowledge of this, and I think I would have been their target audience. Of course, DivX, the media rental, was you would buy these movies from Circuit City, and then you'd watch them, and they would self-destruct, leaving you with a useless piece of plastic.
Oh, God, that's so handy.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that either.
The DivX audio codec was based on that. It was named in honor of that, saying, let's make DivX a useful word instead of this byword for something awful. And finally, Raphael was listening to the show and said, yes, I use my Roku in a hotel with a software program called Connectify Hotspot, which creates a router based on hotel Wi-Fi. So it's almost a pick there. Thank you, Raphael, for that as well. And thank you, Peter Wells. Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I do what you mentioned yesterday on the show. I travel with an Airport Express, an old one that I don't use anymore. I travel with that and a Chromecast, and that's how I get around. Yeah, those terrible Wi-Fi speeds in hotels, and I just plug straight into the Ethernet, and there I go.
Yeah, actually, we got a few people on Twitter and a couple other emails from people who do the same thing. So it's not entirely rare. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but there's certainly enthusiasts like yourself who do it. And I've done it too. I don't do it anymore. I've just kind of gotten so many other things that I have to carry usually for podcasting that I'm like, I'll deal with the router some other way. But yeah, it is that is also a pick of the day, is like, get yourself a nice travel router or use an old router that you have. Twitter.com/Peter Wells. Go follow him, PeterWells. You can find his work at recordnerd.com.au. Anything in particular to let folks know about coming up?
No. Just keep an eye on the Twitters. I'll mention anything. Hopefully I'm going to get my hands on a Samsung Galaxy S6 this week. So I really do want to see what it looks like in person, because it does look gorgeous in the photos. But and it'll be nice to see what Samsung can do with I don't know, this newer kind of high-end model that they're trying out. So yeah, I can't wait to play with it.
Keep an eye out for that. That'll be a reckoner, I guess.
That will indeed. But yes, just follow me on the Twitters in case someone else pays me to write it for them instead.
Absolutely. Twitter.com/Peter Wells. And thank you to our patrons, 4,868 folks who are supporting the show. We thank every single one of you, and the people who don't support us on Patreon but support us elsewhere. We get supported in all kinds of ways, and we appreciate it all. It's the value for value model. If you get something out of the show and you are willing and able to give a little back, we provide ways for you to do that. Patreon.com/Ace Detect is $1 a month. Is really all we ask. Or you can go to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. You can get access to the Daily Tech News Show store. We got mouse pads and t-shirts and artwork from Jenny Josephson, our producer, and all kinds of cool stuff over there. Whatever floats your boat, and even if it's just telling people about the show, we appreciate your support. Got an early show tomorrow because I'm headed to San Diego to do a panel at Social Media Marketing World about the future of podcasting. So DTNS will be at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. It'll be in your feeds a little earlier if you listen that way, like most people do. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can give us a call, 512-59-DAILY. That's 593-2459. Listen to the show live at tunein.alphageekradio.com and visit our website, dailytechnewsshow.com. We'll be back tomorrow, as I said, early with Justin Robert Young and Steve Kovac from Business Insider. Talk to you then.
This podcast is part of the Frog Pants Studios Network. For more information about this and other shows, visit frogpants.com. Audio program so good, it's like you're there.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Boom.
Woohoo.
Well,
Thank you for
guys
that.
just
Thank
Uptown
you.
funked it up. Sorry.
I normally get to be the host and ask the dumb question. So I'm always a little bit wary when I have to supposedly be the expert on a topic like I was this
Well,
morning.
and I try to take that into account and not go, well, you're from Australia, so tell us everything about what drones do in Australia, because I know that's not the way it really works.
Alrighty, I've got to get to work.
All right,
Thank you
man.
guys. That was fun.
Cheers. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye. Drumming provided by Roger Chang. Is that technically beatboxing when you do that?
No, I think beatboxing is. Actually, I don't know. I don't think. Maybe it is beatboxing. As a form of vocal percussion. Well, technically, it's not vocal, is it? Is whistling considered vocalizing? No, because it doesn't use your vocal cords.
No, it doesn't.
So, no, it would not be.
Who
Because
can it be now? Australia knows. I love that one. Jenny, do you have any
Oh my God, you can't hear me, can you?
title favorites? No, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I didn't think you could hear me. Because I just sang Who Can It Be Now? Australia Knows. Nobody heard. I also like the Facebook of Things
That's pretty good.
and Orwellstralia. I like that a lot. Orwellstralia.
I'll vote that one up. I like it. It's
Yeah,
funny.
that's a good one.
All right, that seems to be popular. I'm going to
That's
let
the
it
kind of
cook.
title. Yeah.
Go in showbot.tv if you're watching live and
Let it
do a little
stew.
voting on your favorites.
And also, the dingo ate my data.
That's probably funnier to us than it
I
is.
know.
I'm just thinking.
That's
I'm
like
just
a serious. No, that's like an actually serious crime that occurred in Australia that we probably
I
shouldn't
know.
make fun of.
Exactly.
Even though.
And it was recreated in a movie with Sam Neill.
Is that where it got popularized?
No, it was popularized before then because it was a huge case. But
I heard about it from Seinfeld. I mean, I actually heard about the case, but then I heard when it became popularized to me was when Seinfeld.
I knew about it since high school, which is like late 80s, early 90s, I think, or mid 90s.
The votes are coming in. Orwellstralia out in the lead. The dingo ate my data, and who can it be now? Right on its heels, Facebooking all the things, falling behind along with the Facebook of things, and Orwellian.
Which I like.
Orwellian. I don't know how you pronounce
like
it, but I
it.
like it.
It's a written joke.
Mm-hmm.
A ding. So it was made popular from a movie called The Cry in the Dark,
Ah,
but that was not the one with Sam Neill in it.
gotcha.
I think, does it?
It's the one with
No,
Meryl
it
Streep.
is. It is the one with Sam Neill in it. At the time, I thought Sam Neill was only acting after Jurassic Park. No, he had a career before that.
There's also a lady in it, I believe, named Meryl.
I don't believe in streeps.
I just believe in me.
Yeah.
Did she win an Oscar for it?
The odds say yes. Although I don't know. By the way, have you seen Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor and how it looks
Yes.
exactly like the sequel to the Social Network 2045?
Actually,
We're
actually,
tied. Orwellstralia, and who can it be now? Who can it be now in the lead? I'm going to give it 2 more seconds.
I like Orwellstralia.
It's tied again. Damn you. All right, I'm gonna go with producer's preference tiebreaker and say Roger and Jenny get the final vote. You're like the vice president.
I like
Senate is tied.
Orwellstralia.
Yeah, so do I. So that's 2.
There you go. Well, yeah. I
So
was
it
just-
officially raises it by one vote. Even though I already voted.
no, I was basically acknowledging that you both liked it and saying that that's the tiebreaker.
You know, Jesse Eisenberg in that photo actually looks more like a younger version.
I'll be honest, I was kind of disappointed by that photo because I saw the headlines about it. I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to see it. And it's like, oh, it's just Jesse Eisenberg without hair.
No, it kind of looks like if what's the character from Breaking Bad? What's his
Walter
name?
White,
I know that's where I was
Jesse
going.
Pinkman. Pinkman.
Gustavo Fring? I don't think we're stretching here.
Also Pinkman.
It looks like it.
Walt Jr.
Walt, oh, that's it, Walt. It reminds me of if Walt did everything he did in high school. Instead
Walter
of waiting
White. The first thing I said.
Walter White, the main character guy.
That's yeah.
Who's
The
in
only
every
character most
episode.
people could name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Now we know where Roger's pop cultural blind spot is.
I never watched that show. Everyone just like totally.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Nah, I've never watched it. Part of it is because I didn't have premium TV, premium cable to get it, and
You're on a
two,
different tier.
yeah, I just got the basics so I could get high-speed internet, and at the time you had to get basic cable TV, which I needed anyway because I don't get any TV reception where I live, which sucks.
Oh, I know. San Francisco's the worst. I think it's the terrain, really.
It's definitely all the hills.
Yeah.
I don't get a line of sight to any radio antennas or towers.
Because I got just as good of a reception over the air in San Rafael as I did when I lived in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Except for NBC, which is down in San Jose and no one gets. Unless you live down there.
NBC. Well, they used to get it until those yutzes at
Cron.
thought they could outwit NBC.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to hold your toes to the fire.
How'd that work out for you, Cron?
They're
I don't know.
still
Cron's doing okay. They're still around. I'm kind of surprised.
They
them credit.
managed that by automating a lot of their studio.
They've become the KTLA of San Francisco.
I haven't seen enough of KTLA. I thought that, honestly, I think they're just a new coffee.
Although, wait, KTLA has the CW. I don't think Cron has any network affiliation, do they?
None.
None at all.
They aren't an independent. That's why I think they're more of a coffee. Actually, coffee time. Yeah, coffee. KFY.
Mm-hmm.
Except they don't have the cool after hours monster feature with the host dressed up as like undead creatures telling you about the next bad movie you're gonna watch.
Yeah, when I moved, that's how long ago I moved. Because when I moved, Cron was still the NBC affiliate. For
Wow.
like the first year that I lived there, and then it switched. Oh, local television.
It adds that flavor. It adds that local flavor.
Talking about it makes Jenny clam up.
I can't even hear her. It's like
Or
something.
maybe are you trying to talk?
I see her lips move, but I don't hear audio. Oh,
Seriously,
wait.
this thing does not like gravity. All right.
Yeah, just get. It's
Terrible. I don't even
Oh,
know.
I'll wire up
better?
your home for you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you now.
All right. I was going to say, what it makes me think of is, next up, a monkey that goes bananas for basketball.
What? No water skiing squirrel? Just hold that over and keep people watching until the very end. Or check out these kids acting like adults. Isn't that cute?
A common household product that could kill you.
A knife?
Bad people are close to your neighborhood. But we
Oh,
won't
too
tell
much
you right
water
away.
could be deadly.
Knock, knock. It's a robber. Are you next? It's
too
funny because it's true.
Those teases are just the worst.
If Eileen's watching television and and it ends and the local news thing begins, I'm like, turn it off. It's making us dumber.
I like. Do you guys watch? Follow the YouTube channel News Be Funny.
No, I don't.
It's great. It just collects all the funny moments from mostly just local news in the U.S., but occasionally they'll drop in a couple of foreign channels as well, typically British. But it's great. There's just some really oddball stuff that happens that isn't even accidental.
And it's sad, too, because there's some really good reporting done at some local stations. I know David Stevenson at Fox in Oakland did some fantastic reporting for KTVU. It's a great station.
He still does.
the teasing just makes me not want to even watch that.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of that just happened. I don't know. It's weird. Like, I'm sure Jenny knows that like local news stations work on an entirely different wavelength.
Well, the thing is that especially the local stations here have some of the, I mean, it's a huge market, so they have some of the absolute best reporters, and local news is the last news organizations to have real beats, right? And not the lower market ones that don't have enough resources, but like these big market stations, they're the last people that are sending people like reliably to the same location every day to get the news. So
Yeah.
when there is news, you've got these great people telling the stories, but oh man, the all the junk that gets in the way is really painful. It's not those I mean, those are good, solid reporters. I have having been the parachuting network a-hole that parachutes in with no knowledge of any story. I have relied on a lot of local news reporters, and they're good at what they do. The whole overall package, as one of the last profit centers in news, is a bummer.
Yep.
Is verdad.
That was a lot of talking in one sentence. I'm
No,
sorry.
I didn't have anything to add. You basically nailed,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same reason why like local papers that don't have a big enough circulation are just going down the toilet. It happened to the Examiner, and I think the Chronicle's halfway in the grave right as it is.
Well, my theory on this, and I've mentioned it, I think elsewhere, is it's the fact that you're competing with everyone now.
Yes.
And so what needs to happen is consolidation, right? We don't need a separate TV station from a newspaper, from a radio. And those newspapers don't need to be spending money on international coverage in many cases. Because there's plenty, because everything is global now. So we haven't quite hit the model. And I think there's a point coming soon where the newspapers have sort of been masking the disappearance, and TV stations have been masking the disappearance of local coverage. And we're going to see a big hole develop, and then suddenly the innovation will have to take over.
I think part of it is just, I mean, especially newspapers are just, I wouldn't say hidebound, but they were created by a mindset that doesn't work anymore. And so I think
they were your only, in pre-TV and radio days, they were your only way of finding out anything about the entire world, and yet that's not the case anymore. You have infinite ways to find out about the entire world now. But we don't have nearly enough ways to find out about our local communities. That's the big gaping hole that is not seen.
Street sheets. Remember those? I'm finally glad they stopped selling. I would gladly give them money to not buy one of those. It's like, here's $5, 10. No, I'm thinking like Chron and Chronicle, and they could still have the name Chronicle, but it'll be spelled KRONICLE. Chronicle.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
But the thing is, I mean, the Chron is owned by, I'm trying to remember the name of the family that owns it, but they don't want to sell it. Like they wouldn't want to do it. It's both a prestige item, as well as like, hey, I don't want to share. News is, we just have the station. It isn't our life, which is a little different than someone who does it because they're passionate about that line of work.
All right, that is it. I'm out of the post.
So starting at 11. So the show goes at 11.
Yeah, the show is live at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Plan accordingly, ladies and gentlemen who watch live.
Accordingly.
Exactly. Talk to you later.
All right.